All right, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fourth and final Fireside Chat for the Fall Fireside Chat, I think we called it. We are Content Lab. We do technical content. That's what we do. We're a technical marketing, content marketing company. We've been doing technical content for years and years. It's all we do. We do it very well, and we're really happy to be here. And myself, my name is Peter White. I'm a content strategist here at Content Lab. I've been doing content strategy for a couple of years now. Before that, I was a full stack developer for too many years, maybe 13 years. I'd have to check my resume to know for sure, sadly, but long enough. And I'm happy to be on this side of the table and helping developers with great content. And here with me, as always, is the lovely and talented Roger Winter. Roger, introduce yourself to the people.
Hey, thanks, Peter, and thanks for joining, everyone. I'm Roger Winter. I'm a content strategist here at Content Lab. Been working at Content Lab for a little over 2 years. Before that, I was a web developer and was also involved in the content space for quite a while as a freelance writer. And yeah, so I've been around the technical writing and content strategy space for quite a while, and excited to share some insights with you guys today.
Awesome. If you've been to all our fall fireside chats, you're really used to those intros. You know us very well, and you can probably recite them yourselves. But for anyone new, that's who we are. Today, we're here to talk about balancing trends with evergreen insights, which is very, very important for a robust content strategy. If you don't have enough of both, you're going to find yourself in trouble. So we're here to talk about that a little bit today. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll do a little Q&A at the end of this, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. If you have any questions that we don't get to or anything you want to talk about outside of this, feel free to drop us an email. We love to talk about this kind of stuff, so any chance we get. So to start things off, we're going to throw to Roger here to give us a little, just a better understanding of what evergreen content is when we talk about it.
Yeah, so before we get too deep, let's just kind of set the groundwork with a definition of evergreen. So the concept of evergreen content, it refers to information and materials that retain their value over a long period of time, ideally like forever, but that's sort of the archetypal, but no information is really relevant forever, but we try to get as close as possible. So the idea being that you have a piece of content that's pretty much timeless, and it's a reliable resource that readers can keep coming back to, and it's not going to be out of date. It's something that just retains its relevance over a very extended period. So think, we're in the tech space where things change pretty quickly. So, but there are still a lot of opportunities for evergreen content. So think like foundational tutorials or things that introduce fundamental concepts in programming that aren't going to change, or the basics of the fundamentals of a particular language or something like that that are very unlikely to change much over time. But also just, there's a lot of opportunities for things like historical content or anything that, is speaking to something that is very much set in stone, where you can create a piece of content and know that if you come back to it in a decade, it's pretty much going to be, the information is pretty much going to be just as accurate as it was the day it was written. And just to kind of contrast that with the other thing we're talking about here is sort of trending content, or sort of, I don't know what term we're using for it, Peter, but, sort of the other side of evergreen, things that are very topical and to the minute. They're talking about trends. They might contain predictions of the future or information that might become outdated in various ways, like citing particular statistics or prices or things like that. So just kind of balance. Just want to kind of set the stage there as we dive into discussion for what it really means to be evergreen, and the contrast to that, the trending content, and then we're going to talk a bit about how you can synergize those two things and create a balance that appeals to your entire audience, whether they're looking for up to the minute insights or very timeless facts and details. So what's your approach to that, Peter? Like, what do you think defines a good piece of evergreen content, and how does that, and what is its relevance in the tech space?
Sure. I mean, I think where you have to start to really be able to understand what evergreen content is and how it works for tech is to kind of understand, the needs of your audience. So the needs of a tech audience are usually pretty specific. I mean, generally they're looking to solve a problem, and I mean that tends to be where evergreen content really comes in, is with the fundamentals of things, because the tech audience, especially developers, I don't want to speak for the other people in tech because I haven't done those jobs, but as a developer, I find myself ashamed of my Google search history because so often I'll be Googling just the most fundamental thing. If I haven't used a language in 2 years and then I go to make a function and go, how do you even start this? And so it's kind of important to have that what I call like kind of like a bedrock of evergreen content. So you have this really solid, always going to be right, always going to be helpful content that developers can really rely on when they're in a pinch. You know what I mean? So evergreen content I find really establishes that you guys what you're talking about as a company. So if you have some really good evergreen content about both your product and general topics in your space, then developers, when they're looking for these answers, will stumble upon that. And if you read enough evergreen content that brings true, you go, okay, these guys really know what they're talking about. This is a source that I can trust. And so it kind of, it's not as flashy as the topical content, but it's the kind of truths that you can really help to shape that image of knowing what you're talking about. So I mean, obviously, developers when they are searching, it's not always going to be like a fundamental foundational thing. Sometimes they are searching for trendy stuff. So that's why it's kind of important to have that mix. And the evergreen content is just the stuff that's always going to be there to help prove that you know what you're talking about. What's your take on that, Roger?
I think that was a great point about just sort of being able to publish stuff that really allows people to understand your knowledge and your value in the space. And a lot of time that is evergreen content, and it might even be things that, like you said, Peter, like you keep coming back to materials even if you know a language for however many years. You might forget a few details and need to look it up. And sometimes that is a really great way to sort of to build trust with an audience, because if they come to you looking for an answer that they basically already know the answer, they're just looking for a piece of reference information, and you actually provide the right information in the right format and solve their problem. I think that does wonders for your reputation, and just like it would encourage me as a developer to engage with more of your content.
For sure. And I think that's, we use the term evergreen, like you said, as, the ideal would be that this is going to be correct forever. But there are occasionally some small changes you have to make to it, which I think is why it's important to not completely forget about your evergreen content. Don't just kind of set it and forget it. Occasionally, there will be some small updates you have to make. And even if they're tiny, if they're not made, then suddenly your evergreen content looks stale, and then you're in a little bit of trouble. So it really is just the valuable backbone of your content strategy is this kind of content. So where I kind of think the real balance between evergreen and topical is necessary is trying to come up with like a regular publishing schedule, because I think we can all agree having a regular schedule is very, very important. And it'd be tough to do that with just evergreen content. So it's really important to have a kind of a mix there, because your topical content really helps support your evergreen, and without the mix, it's really hard to get that regular schedule, which I think is pretty important. I think you'd agree with that, would you, Roger? What's the importance of a regular publishing schedule?
It's hard to understate the importance of regular publishing. I mean, just to kind of list some benefits right off the top. I mean, for one thing, it's just a matter of planning, and it really helps to know what your next couple pieces of content are going to be, what that plan looks like. Try to make like a holistic picture of what your content calendar is. So, and that not only allows you to plan your actual content, but it allows you to, make sure you have the resources in place to actually produce and publish all of that content. But that's from sort of the content producer standpoint. But from the audience standpoint, it's really nice to have a regular cadence. Like if there's a particular blog that I know publishes something every week or every 2 weeks, I might tune in and just have a look and see, hey, what's new on this blog? I know they publish regularly. So that can just kind of keep people coming back and lets them know when to come back. And then just, I mean, in terms of just staying topical and on top of trends and stuff, you just need to constantly publish new content as tech changes, which it never stops doing. So, which is interesting, because it might seem like, as we talk about publishing new content and staying up to date with trends and new technologies, that we're focusing specifically on trends, and there's not a lot of opportunity for evergreen content in there. But as new technologies become available and things change, there's actually continuously new opportunities for evergreen content being created. So, instead of writing something about the fundamentals of C++ or some old technology like that, you could find yourself creating the evergreen content for something brand new, and something that's going to stand the test of time for a while. So I think it's interesting to keep that perspective of not just historical, but like this is something that can be applied on an ongoing basis. And I think that really gets into kind of the topic of synergizing those things, finding the opportunities to create evergreen things about new technologies, as well as just provide the sort of need to know information that people want to learn about the new product as well.
For sure, yeah. And I think one thing we haven't spoken about here, but another reason that it's important to have this balance is that on the whole, evergreen content can be hard to make. Like it's more effort to make content that is going to stand up. And like you said, if you've got something new coming out, to do kind of the research and the groundwork to make sure that you're giving the full truth of something new is difficult. It's more work than some topical pieces can be. So having a regular publishing schedule is difficult at the best of times, but I think we can all agree it's important not to just publish content for the sake of publishing content. Like it should have a point and it should have a reason. And so to be able to try to fill that up with just this evergreen content is difficult. So it's really important to kind of plan out what your plan is. I know that's not the right way to put it, but it's important to have a plan, because if you just go, okay, I need content by this date, and then all of a sudden it's a week before and you're panicking, I got to get something out, then now you're just publishing for the sake of publishing and you don't really have a plan to it. So it's really important to plan this out well in advance, because even if you do, it's hard because there's always something that comes up or something is delayed or whatever. So to really maintain that regular publishing schedule is a lot of work, and you kind of need to put in the groundwork to be able to do it with this mix of topical content, which can be maybe a little quicker to produce, and evergreen content, which is got a little more oomph to it. So it's difficult, but it's very, very important, because everybody hates going to a blog where there's been no posting for a month or something. Like it's a sad thing to see. It's like going to a restaurant where they haven't updated the specials for a couple of weeks, and you're like, are they even really trying? You know what I mean?
How special is it really?
Yeah, exactly. It can't be. I don't want the pumpkin spice now that it's November 15th or whatever. It's time to give me something different.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, though, just about it really, to me, if I go to a website and I click on their blog and there's just nothing on it, or it's been months or years, it feels it doesn't feel like the organization is like alive or like active or really out putting things out there. So I think maybe that is just one of probably the biggest benefit to having a regular publishing schedule, is just keeping that momentum going and letting people know that you're alive and you're active and you have things to say. And and then you can kind of synergize that with everything else going on in your content strategy.
Yeah, to jump on that, this is something that we do isn't necessarily for this topic, but we talk so much about the importance of building a community, which is really a key thing if you want to have users both supporting each other and helping find other users. And regular publishing content regular publishing schedule is part of that. It lets people know that stuff is coming. They can come back, they can discuss it. So it just kind of keeps that conversation going. And like you said, lets people know that you're there, you're paying attention, you're involved in this, and you want to foster that sort of sense of community with your product. So we talked about the importance of evergreen content and how it's it can be challenging, but it's very worth it to create. But what kind of content types best suit evergreen content? What should people be looking to make when they want to make some solid, lasting evergreen content?
It's important to just keep asking the question whenever you're writing or trying to create a piece of evergreen content, is like, for every sentence and every detail that you add in there, just pull back a little bit and ask yourself, will this be relevant in a month? Will it be relevant in a year? What about a decade? Because the ideal piece of evergreen content, like we said already, is something that really stands the test of time. So something that your great grandchildren could be reading in decades. And like, obviously that's sort of a lofty goal, but like, just want to put the archetypal piece of evergreen content out there. It's really difficult to do that when writing about tech. I would say it's rarely possible because things just sort of become obsolete, but that's just the framework that you want to establish for yourself as you go forward. And what I find when producing evergreen content is typically the little details are what becomes outdated the most quickly. And the devil really is in the details. Like you said earlier, Peter, like even in an evergreen piece, like you can keep your evergreen pieces evergreen by giving them a little bit of maintenance every now and then. Because we're probably not going to hit this ideal of writing everything perfectly to stand the test of time. But where that really shines or becomes really important to me is like things with like figures and numbers that might change. Like prices are probably like the worst offender here. If you write something and you put like a specific price in it, that's going to be outdated almost by the time you publish it, almost every time. And if I come back to a piece of content, everything is right, and then I get to it and the price is like the price that it was 10 years ago, I'm gonna be like, wait, nobody has looked at this thing in 10 years. Is it accurate? So and also just like statistics, whatever that, performance metrics, things like that. Generally, you want to avoid putting those into evergreen pieces, or find ways to soften the language so that you're not like trying to give precise figures. Another major pitfall I would say in trying to create evergreen content is any kind of future predictions, any kind of speculations. If you're wrong in those predictions, or if we're completely off the mark and somebody reads it after that event has occurred or that has been realized, it's going to look pretty bad. And similarly, it kind of ties in, like opinions are generally something that you want to leave out of your evergreen pieces, because just like social and cultural contexts and perceptions are going to shift around opinions. So what sounded great a couple of months ago or years ago may not hold up. And so, I mean, there is maybe some opportunity if you're like a really prominent thought leader to create something that is like an opinion piece that remains evergreen. But generally, that's a tall order. So your evergreen content should just be more focused on the facts and the figures and the hard data that is going to remain pretty much the way it is.
That seems like the perfect opportunity to plug our December Fireside Chat, where we will be predicting trends for 2024, which is more of a topical content than an evergreen. I have been notified too that there's a little bit of static on this mic, so sorry about the whole thing. We just wanted to give you the experience of ordering at your favorite drive-thru. So we've got a little bit of static put in the background. So sorry about that if that's bothering anybody. But to build on what you're saying there, Roger, about evergreen content, I think you kind of nailed it there. Like evergreen content is kind of more about the substance than the actual content type. Like evergreen content can be presented in any format. Do you know what I mean? There's videos that are evergreen. There's tutorials. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, especially for languages that have been around forever. Like, there's C++ tutorials written in whatever 2001 that are still relevant today. It's you can find places to put them wherever you want. But it really depends on the actual content itself that is evergreen. So it's not so much about the presentation. I guess maybe I'm being a little flippant because video does age. It starts to look old after a certain number of years. But the point is that it's the actual content itself that is evergreen and not kind of the format of it. So evergreen content can be repurposed in new formats if need be. And like you said, there shouldn't be anything topical in it that dates it. Prices were a good one. I find dates come up a lot. I mean, someone will write a piece of content and say, this is the greatest framework of the year 2010 or whatever. And then you go, oh, well, no, that's dating it immediately there. But because of that, because you're doing the work to make sure it's not timely and it's not reference-based or anything, I think it's worth taking the extra time to make sure that it's done super right. Like to do your own research, to find data, like you said, that's not going to age well. A topical piece, you need to get it out because you're trying to make it for a certain date. But evergreen stuff, you're planning to have this up forever. So you should take the time to put the extra work in and make sure that it's a really, really solid piece. It's written properly. It's, like Roger said, all the little details that might age are taken out. It's extra time to do it, but if the piece lasts forever, then the value is there. So it's worth taking the time to do that, I think. So on the other side of the coin, Roger, we talked a lot about evergreen content. What about kind of more topical stuff? Like how do we make more topical stuff? One of the things that we used to work around, not used to, we still do work around, is kind of like leveraging events, whether they're industry events that happen once a year or it's a certain time of the calendar. What are some ways that people can use this kind of stuff to make topical content that will get in front of people?
Yeah. Well, this kind of ties into our previous point about publishing schedules. I think we kind of touched on a little bit, just how important it is to kind of plan things out in advance so that in advance rather, so that you can take advantage of these industry events and calendar events and just all the things that's going on. So you want to maintain some flexibility in there as well, because obviously we're creating up to the minute content about news items and things like that. So you don't want everything mapped out in stone and to the point where you can't pivot a little bit if something changes or something really interesting comes up. So you want to maintain a bit of flexibility, but it is really good to just have a pretty solid plan. So 6 months in advance, if there's a conference or something, hey, maybe this is a good opportunity to put out some content around whatever the focus of the conference is, and that can be both evergreen and trending topics. You can publish your evergreen content at any time, just because just because it's meant to be sort of timeless doesn't mean you can't align it with an industry event when you actually publish it, just for promotional purposes and stuff like that. But also, it's really important to just kind of, like, we talked a bit about the community, or the aspects of the community. It's really important to keep engaged with them in this phase, to actually, to gain an organic understanding of what's going on in your industry, so that you can apply that to your calendar and actually keep your ear to the ground, just investigating what's going on. So hanging out wherever your audience happens to go, whether that's social media or could be in-person events or webinars, and just kind of finding ways to synergize what's going on with your other goals and your content strategy. Because I think that's the main thing in terms of aligning things with industry events, is kind of trying to map your goals onto whatever happens to be going on in the industry, and finding the opportunities to take advantage of that through content.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. It really is kind of just a way to piggyback on the success, the fame of something else already, just to get people in front of you. I mean, it's a thing in advertising that's as old as time, I imagine, is using something else. And people just like that kind of content. That's just the way it is. People love, and one of the obvious things, which we're going to do as well, tune in December, is kind of end of the year wrap ups or predictions for the next year. It's only relevant for that short chunk of time, and everybody's kind of interested, because it's like, yeah, I wonder what's going to happen. What was the best thing that happened this year? What is going to happen next year? It's a way to kind of tap into people's, I guess FOMO is a way to put it, but this content is only relevant right now. And if you don't read it right now, you're going to miss it. So it gets people that sense of urgency. So it is a great way to get people in front of your content, but at that point, it kind of becomes up to you to give them a reason to stick around. See what I mean? Because the thing is, when somebody comes to your content because of an outside of event, typically they're more interested in the event or the trend or whatever you're talking about than about your product. And finding that way to transition from talking about the trend or the event to talking about your product in a way that doesn't turn someone off is a bit of a challenge, I find. Because I know I've read a bunch of articles that would be like, it's a Halloween article or something, and then I'm reading about Halloween, and then all of a sudden they'll try to talk about their product, and you go, no, it's an ad now. It needs to be kind of like a natural, kind of seamless way to interweave them together, so that you're almost tricking the reader into reading about your product, and they go, hey, this is related to the thing I like, and I could use this for the thing I like, and now I'm using it. So it's a bit of an art to not just get people to read the content, but to get them to read it in the way that you want to. But it's a great opportunity to cash in on some eyeballs that you wouldn't see otherwise. So, this is something that evergreen content really can't do, because, as opposed to, like you said about evergreen content, the details are what gets you in this topical way of leveraging industry and calendar events. The details are what get people in. So you're kind of, as opposed to shying away from those little details that are not going to age well, you're leaning into them because that's what people are interested in right this second. So, it's you don't have the same kind of thing with evergreen where it's going to last forever and it'll always get views, but it'll get a spike, and then you got to do something with that spike. So that, they're two different approaches to getting people to read your content, and they're whatever, they're very different. And if you don't do both, then you're leaving a lot of stuff on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great opportunity to take a few risks in your content, even. Yeah, try to maybe make some predictions or put some numbers out there, or try to stay up to the minute and it's kind of it's almost a dangerous thing to report on trends, in a way, when you're trying to maintain accuracy. But there's definitely some room to take risks, especially when things are really emerging in the industry. Like there's been a lot of stuff around AI recently, and you see all sorts of articles that take wildly different perspectives on it, and whether or not that stands the test of time, it's very interesting in the moment because people want to know what other people are thinking about this, even if so in that case, like accuracy and everything is still important in everything we do, but there's opportunities there to kind of branch out a little bit and say, speak your mind and just be open and engage with the community, which is a point we keep coming back to.
I think I really like your point there about using it as an opportunity to take some risks, because with this kind of content where you said like it is, it's a prediction or it's something very timely and it's not meant to be around forever, you can take a wild swing and try to justify it. If you're wrong, that's fine, but you do get a bit of attention. So I think that's something that maybe is overlooked a bit, but that's a great point. Is to you can use this kind of content because it's not going to be around for years, to just take a stab at something and see if you can get somebody interested.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I do want to talk about this because, like you said, this has come up a lot. Is the community and understanding the community and having kind of a finger on the pulse of the community. And we talk about this a lot because this is a question we get asked a lot. But like, how do you stay up on that? How do you understand what trends are important? How do you understand what everybody's talking about? How do you understand how developers are looking at things? How can a company do that?
Yeah, there's not really one simple answer to that, but if I was to try to sum it up in a single answer, it would be to actually be organically interested and engaged with these communities, which can be a complicated thing to do, especially if you're trying to like reverse engineer it from a content marketing perspective or something. But I think when we're talking about trending topics and especially taking risks and trying to stay at sort of the cutting edge of what's going on, I think it's really important to not fall into a trap of just playing catch up with your competitors. So you need to do a little bit more than just reading content that other people have published, like reading other news sources or blogs or things like that. Because if you're looking at that, you're kind of always looking at the past, in the sense that someone had to have some kind of experience to create that content in the first place, and then you're reading about it. And then you might want to produce a similar piece of content, but at that point you're lagging behind, especially if we're talking about very topical things. So the way to avoid that is to just go directly to the source and actually be as engaged and present as possible. And so that means figuring out where your audience, where they congregate, what sort of communities they engage with. And there's a lot of opportunities for that on the internet. Obviously, like social media is a massive source. Depending on what you're doing, maybe there's a Reddit community or a forum or a LinkedIn group or a Git community or a Discord server, whatever it is. That's where people are actually talking and asking questions. And if you're in the right sort of community, they will usually be like weeks or months ahead of what's going on in the industry, like what blogs are publishing and stuff, because they're actually the ones hands-on with it day to day. So that's sort of being like in the trenches, like right there on sort of the front lines of what's progressing. All that discussion is happening in communities. It's also happening in in-person events and webinars and things like that. So the real answer is to just be super engaged, and not just with like media outlets, but with the people on the ground as much as possible.
For sure. I'd add to that, the developers within your own company.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get that firsthand knowledge. Because I think one thing that we kind of skirt around sometimes, but I think is important, is to have actual tech people on your team. Because it's one thing just to be in these forums and to be listening to what everyone's saying, but if you don't have that kind of developer perspective firsthand, it can sometimes be hard to understand why they're taking this take on things, or why they like this over this, or without having that kind of hands dirty understanding of the industry. I find it can be hard sometimes for people to understand. So even if you're in those groups, you may not really get it. And the other, sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just too excited, Roger. I get fired up.
I think there's a little bit. I think there's a little bit of latency. Sorry, but
no, you're trying to give me an excuse. I won't take it.
Yeah, please go on.
The other thing that I think is really key, that kind of slightly outside topic, but for really capturing these tech trends, I think one thing that's very important is to have a really kind of tight process with low turnaround times, because these trends can come and go really quick. And if you kind of miss the wave, even if you don't miss it, but even if you're at the back end of the wave, you'll miss a lot of traffic because people have beaten you to it. So you don't only just have to be able to identify the trends, you have to be able to understand them and turn it into content quickly so that you don't miss your opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing that effectively, kind of to your point earlier about needing to actually sort of understand the context of these spaces and not just be in them. Yeah, I think that's the trickiest part, because it, like I said earlier, to me, it's engagement. Actually being engaged in these communities and participating in them to some extent. Just being sort of an outside observer, just kind of lurking around the forums and stuff, that might give you some insights. It might kind of give you a snapshot of what's going on, but the real way to do this organically is to actually, be participating in those communities to some degree. So you know what's going on, and it's a legitimate point of interest and connection. And to Peter's point about working with your own team, your own technical resources that you might have in your organization, that can be a great, I guess, can be a community effort for sure, because you probably already have developers in your organization who are going to these communities organically, and they're doing it professionally and just out of their personal interest as well. So engaging with them can be a shortcut to the strategy that we're describing here, because they're probably already doing what we're talking about, and they can probably point you in the right direction to some degree. But of course, they're very, very busy people as well, so it's not always easy to shift them over to content. But definitely some insights you can mine there, and a resource to take advantage of.
Yeah, stuff. You got to go knock on the dungeon door and try to distract them and not let in too much light. A joke. Anyway, that is what we had for you guys today. That's all we had to talk about on this topic. We got a couple minutes here. We're having some technical issues, so we're not going to go too long in these questions, but we'll answer a couple questions real quick, and then we will wrap it up. Question number 1, Roger, from the audience. What is your approach to adapting evergreen content when small details become outdated due to technological advances? What do you think that that's a little specific, but we can probably give a general answer to that.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to what we were saying before of giving your evergreen pieces a bit of a regular refresh. So it might be a good idea to just sort of audit your evergreen pieces every, I don't know, twice a year, once a year, or something like that, and really look for those small details, like we were saying before. Prices are a really big one. Dates. Maybe if you did take a risk and make a prediction and it was wrong, maybe you could silently edit that out at some point. Just and it kind of goes back to keeping up with the trends in the community as well. Like if you see something, like maybe a particular library in a programming language that's been around for a long time becomes especially relevant, or something like that, you can just you can take those opportunities to revisit. But I would say it's mostly in the small details. But what do you think, Peter? I know you made this point earlier about kind of refreshing. So what's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, like you said, keeping up with, not like you said, but keeping up with trends and noticing when new releases come out and go, oh, wait a minute, that's something we have some content about that maybe we should check into. So it's kind of like keeping a pulse on what your evergreen content is about. If you really want to get crazy about it, you could keep track of those little details while you're writing it and go, hey, these are the details that may change in the future, and we can monitor these, as opposed to reading the same piece every 6 months. So there's not like unfortunately, there's not like a really slick answer. It is just a little bit of manual labor and checking up on your pieces and making sure everything's stayed in date. Unfortunately, I bet there'll be an AI tool for it soon, but at the moment there's not. So you just got to do the work. All right, we're going to get to one last question here, and then we're going to wrap it up. So question number 2, Roger, this is for companies that kind of, and this is, I think a lot of people are seeing this now, marketing departments especially, people with limited resources, especially smaller companies who are really looking to get their name out there. What type of content here should they be focusing on to raise awareness? Should they be focused on evergreen? Should they be focused on topical? What do you think?
It's probably a blend of both ultimately, but it may be more towards the trending topical side. I would say, like if our goal is to just grab awareness, if we don't have a really well established platform to like push this evergreen content, then Like what's probably going to grab the most eyeballs is being topical and up to the minute and relevant. But also, like we said before, there's opportunities there to kind of build up your reputation by creating reference material and giving people some information that maybe they know is true, and they can look to you as a trusted source. But I think it's mostly on the trending topical side for awareness. Things that are very relevant and up to the minute. And opportunity to maybe take some risks, like we said before, and grab that attention in a way that evergreen content isn't quite going to do for you. But keeping in mind that it can also kind of they can balance each other out, and they both there's a strong synergy there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think regardless of how limited your resources are, you do need a little bit of a balance of both. Maybe even this is just rough, but even maybe like a 75-25 topical evergreen. I think you need that foundation. You need people to find a place on your site, even if it's something as simple as documentation about your own product, or something like how to use your own product, something that's just there, that is always going to be there, that people can see and go, okay, this is the truth for this thing, and I can build off that. Because if you don't have any of that, if everything is just topical and trendy, then it seems like you don't have a lot of substance, and it doesn't feel like a company that's going to stick around. So it's tempting to go only topical when your resources are limited, but you really got to take the time to build this out solidly with a mix of both. Unfortunately, I wish I could just say throw it all in topical, hope for the best, but that's just not the case. All right. Well, that's it for us today, Roger. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it. Just a couple of key takeaways for this. Obviously, you need a mix of both topical and evergreen. Evergreen for foundation, topical for awareness. I like to think of evergreen as the cake and topical as the icing. The icing draws you in, but if the cake is bad, we're not sticking around. The other thing is to be part of the community. You've got to be in there. You got to know what's going on. If you're going to try to follow trends, you have to know the trends. You have to know them ahead of time, and keep that regular publishing schedule. That's I think above all else. If you're not regularly publishing, then we're not really doing content. So keep that schedule. Keep it ahead of time. Keep planning it out. Thank you again very much for being here, everybody. This is the end of our fall Fireside Chat series, but we do have a special end of the year. I don't want to call it a winter Fireside Chat, but it's a Fireside Chat where we'll be looking at the top trends from 2023, and we'll be predicting the top trends for 2024. So that'll be on December 7th. Check us out. Come join us for that. We very much appreciate you being here. Any last words, Roger?
Just thanks for joining, everyone. It's fun. It's fun chatting, and yeah, good luck with your content calendars.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, everybody.